This past Tuesday, Democrat Doug Jones defeated Republican Roy Moore in Alabama's U.S. Senate race.
Political analysts Wendy Patrick and Laura Fink join us now with This Week in Politics. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Christina.
So all eyes obviously on this race. Are we surprised at the outcome?
I'm frankly surprised it was as close as it was, given the nature and the extent of the allegations against Roy Moore. You know, one of the things that probably accounts for at least some of the defeat is the ability to write in a candidate. There's lots of Republicans that no doubt were saying in straw polls they're going to vote Republican, they have Republican values, but when it came to it, they just couldn't bring themselves to vote for somebody that had that much baggage. Sexual misconduct being one of them. Really, there was a lot of things that distinguished Roy Moore negatively from Doug Jones, but I'm still surprised he got as many votes as he did.
Right. Laura?
Well,
I don't even know what to ask, but Laura, what are your thoughts?
Well, okay, so it looks a lot rosier for Democrats taking the Senate in 2018 because they said once upon a time to get that majority they would have to win Arizona, they'd have to win Nevada, and they'd have to have a miracle. Well, on Tuesday we witnessed that miracle when we saw the deeply red state of Alabama go into the Democratic column. And it wasn't just because they had put on the top of the ticket on the Republican side an accused pedophile. It was because there was a surge in Democratic turnout, particularly in the black community, that rose up. And that's not just a response to Roy Moore. That's also a response to Donald Trump. We know that he campaigned hard for Roy Moore. And in the face of that, not only, as Wendy said, did Republican voters choose to stay home, but we saw that surge in Democratic turnout standing up for morality in the face of a really dark position in our politics. I mean,
the accusations for Roy Moore, and obviously he's claiming his innocence, and that's fine. But I mean, the accusations themselves have been as horrid as we've ever seen in the history of politics in this country. Luther Strange was a likely candidate for the Republican Party for Alabama. Had Luther Strange been elected in the primary, that Republican seat would have stayed with the Republican Party. What happened there, Laura, that Roy Moore ended up beating Luther Strange, going back to that primary?
Well, I think also it's a chance where Democrats are actually playing ball. So they're stepping in and they're investing dollars in turnout and investing in places where, in spite of the fact that there were very restrictive voter ID laws, you know, not only did they put on a voter ID law, which we know impacts minorities, older folks, and young folks, traditional Democratic constituencies, we also know that they then closed the DMVs in all of the black counties. So, you know, as my friend from Alabama likes to say, well, that's just ugly. But in spite of all of that, we saw that the Democrats actually rose to the occasion. So it was an Alabama miracle, but it also shows the techniques that need to be used if Democrats want to have a comeback in the midterms.
But how did Roy Moore beat Luther Strange?
Well, one of the things that you got to look at is, you know, there were lots of allegations that came forward after that, and there were lots of different dynamics in play. I think what we saw is the culmination of literally weeks of press. I can't remember a local race being publicized as much as this one. Maybe the presidential race is the only one that got more press, but it was a nail biter. You had people glued to the sets like they were watching the Super Bowl, trying to figure out what was going to happen here. And, you know, I don't know if we can take the result here and really generalize it to dynamics of politics when you had so many personal problems, understatement, that were dogging Roy Moore. I mean, everything he did was under scrutiny. Remember, he rode in on his horse Sassy to cast his vote. His wife was talking about having a Jewish lawyer. It was almost like one gaffe after another. And you got to believe that that did have some influence as to people that waited to the last minute to make up a decision, or to actually get into the polling place and think, you know what, I'm going to write somebody in. I cannot vote my conscience, even though I'm Republican, because of all these issues. So I don't know whether we can generalize this to the midterms in 2018. We'll
Except
see.
We can generalize it because the same pattern has been happening when there hasn't been such a flawed candidate at the top of the ticket. We saw that in Virginia. Republicans are losing suburban white voters. Republicans are losing in places where they traditionally win. And that has everything to do with the national policies that their president and their Congress are carrying. So we're seeing this shift. It has all the makings of a surge for the Democrats in 2018.
I think what we're learned from that is that both parties are going to look at this really as a case study in what does and doesn't work during elections. All of the different things that both of us have been saying, I think, are going to be looked at by both sides to make sure that it isn't. The Republicans don't want this to be a harbinger of what the election midterms looked like in 2018, but the Democrats are going to learn about a lot of things that worked, not necessarily because of Roy Moore, but just within that environment, getting people out to vote.
All right. I feel like we got their final thoughts.
Oh, we've got more.
But
Christina,
should we
don't worry.
have final thoughts? I think we should. Let's put 30 seconds on the clock. Laura, let's start with you.
Well, I just want to take a moment to thank black women, 98% of which marched into the voting booths like Beyonce onto a Super Bowl field and punched the ticket in favor against opposing a child predator. And it was those black women that were responsible for the victory that we saw in Alabama today. And I also want to say a little something to the white women out there who voted 63% in favor of Roy Moore. I just want to say, please come home. Please start to vote your economic pocketbook. Please come back to us and maybe take a page and listen to the women who led.
Okay, Wendy Patrick.
So I'm going to take 30.
I'm
I'm going to take 35 seconds because Laura went over 5 seconds.
32.
Okay, 32. So.
Oh no, it started already. Go ahead.
So let's talk about the voting. You know, one of the things that as we go into the holidays, everybody should get out there and vote. But it also really brings to mind that we all really care about many of the same things. We all care about our children, about education, about being safe, about, you know, cutting taxes. There are lots of different things that really unite us as human beings, especially as we go into the holidays. We all celebrate. So as we look at the voting booth and you look at the results of Tuesday, one of the things I hope we take from this is we can make a difference regardless of what party you are. If you actually go out there and vote your conscience and vote for the things that unite us. There it is.
All right.
There it is.
If your
30
conscience
seconds.
says
Five more
don't
seconds.
vote for a child predator, go for it.
I didn't say that. Nope, I didn't say that.
No,
I said I'm surprised he got as many votes as he did.
Well, you consider there were 1.2 something million votes cast, and everybody's saying, oh, Alabama did a great job. And 20 something thousand votes.
They could have
was
done
the
better.
Only I mean,
Well, I
That's
mean, they
amazing.
scheduled a special election on purpose for that low
There
voter
you go.
turnout. But we'll get into that.
Laura, Wendy, we thank you both.
All right. Thanks, Raul.
Thanks,
Bye, guys. Have a
Christina.
good day.
All right.